All she ever does is embarrass me. My father's voice cracked through the courtroom like a slap. Not loud, not emotional, just sharp enough to slice through the silence and remind everyone who he believed he was. I did not flinch. I did not turn my head. I kept my hands folded, palms flat against my knees, my back straight, my breathing measured. Years of training had taught me that stillness was not weakness. Sometimes it was the strongest form of control you had. The judge leaned forward, elbows resting on the bench, eyes fixed on my father. His voice was calm, almost gentle, which somehow made it heavier. "Sir," he said, "you truly do not know, do you?" The room shifted. My father's lawyer froze mid-motion, papers half raised, his mouth slightly open as if he had forgotten what he planned to say next. The color drained from my father's face so quickly it felt unreal, like watching a photograph fade. "Wait," my father said, blinking hard. "What do you mean? What do I not know?" I had imagined this room 1,000 times. Not because I wanted to win, not because I wanted him humiliated, but because I knew that sooner or later the truth would have to stand on its own feet, without me holding it up, without me explaining it, without me begging for it to be believed. The Portsmouth County Courthouse smelled like floor wax and old paper, the kind of place where voices lowered themselves automatically, as if the walls remembered every secret ever spoken inside. Wooden benches creaked softly as people shifted. Somewhere behind me, someone cleared their throat. I kept my eyes forward, focused on the grain of the wood on the judge's bench. 2 days earlier, I had been kneeling in my small front yard outside Norfolk, trimming back weeds that had grown wild along the fence line. My knee had started to ache the way it always did when the weather was about to change. Knox, my old German shepherd, lay nearby in the shade, his breathing slow and uneven, one ear twitching at every passing sound. That was when the envelope arrived. Cream-colored, thick paper, the county seal pressed into the corner. I recognized it instantly, even before I opened it. Portsmouth Family Court. I wiped my hands on my jeans and slit the envelope open with my thumb. The words inside blurred for a second, then sharpened in a way that made my chest feel hollow. Petitioner Thomas Hale. Respondent Rebecca Hale. My father was suing me. Not for money. Not exactly. It was about family reputation. About control of assets tied to my grandfather's name. About protecting the dignity of the Hale legacy. Words like abandonment and unfitness were underlined in neat, legal type. I laughed once, a short, dry sound that startled Knox awake. "Well," I muttered, folding the papers. "That is one way to start a conversation." Now, sitting in that courtroom with my father staring at the judge like the ground had shifted under him, I understood something with absolute clarity. Whatever he did not know, whatever he had chosen not to see, was about to step into the light. And, for the first time, I was not afraid of that. It had been 11 years since I left home. The last time I saw my father, he was standing in the driveway with his arms crossed, his jaw locked so tightly it looked painful. He did not yell. He did not beg. He simply told me I was throwing my life away. He told me we did not do that kind of thing in our family. He told me people would talk. I was 22 years old. My orders were folded carefully in my pocket, creased from being checked and rechecked. I remember realizing even then that he was not worried about my safety. He was worried about how it would look. When I carried the summons inside that afternoon, Knox limped after me and rested his heavy head against my thigh. His weight was familiar, grounding. I scratched behind his ears, feeling the steady calm settle into my chest. "I guess we are doing this," I told him. That night I did not sleep. I brewed coffee and sat at the kitchen table long after midnight, staring at paperwork that described my life like it belonged to a stranger. The language was cold and distant, as if a father and daughter were nothing more than opposing columns on a form. Outside, cicadas buzzed relentlessly, loud and unapologetic, filling the dark with noise that refused to be ignored. I thought about all the things I had never told my father over the years, not because they were secrets, but because he never asked. Every conversation we had ever shared felt like a performance, and I had learned early that the safest role to play was silence. I opened the old Navy chest in the corner of my bedroom. It still smelled faintly of metal, oil, and salt water. Inside, my uniform lay folded with care. Medals wrapped in cloth, a flag folded into a perfect triangle. I ran my fingers over the fabric, then closed the lid. I did not need to take it out to remember what it meant. The next morning, I called the clerk's office. "Yes, ma'am," she said politely. "Your father has filed a petition asserting that your continued absence and conduct have caused reputational harm." "Conduct," I repeated quietly, tasting the word. "You will need to appear in person if you wish to contest it." "I will," I said, and meant it. The drive to Portsmouth took less than an hour, but it felt longer. Late summer humidity clung to my skin, heavy and suffocating. I passed the old diner where my father used to take us on Sundays. He would sit in the booth, coffee steaming, telling anyone who would listen about his work, his values, his name. He never mentioned me. Inside the courthouse, the hallway buzzed with low conversation. Lawyers shuffled papers. Families whispered. Shoes squeaked softly against polished floors. When I took a seat near the back, I felt eyes on me. Not hostile, just curious. A woman in uniform always drew attention in places like that. When the clerk called our case, my father was already standing. He looked older than I remembered. His hair had gone gray, but his posture was still rigid, his suit pressed sharp as if control could be ironed into fabric. My mother sat beside him, pearls at her throat, hands folded tightly in her lap. She did not look at me. My father's lawyer began, his voice confident and rehearsed. He talked about embarrassment, about shame, about how my choices reflected poorly on a family that valued discretion and respectability. He spoke as if reputation were a fragile heirloom I had dropped and shattered. All she ever does, my father interrupted, unable to help himself, is embarrass me. The judge raised a hand, not sharply, just enough to still the room. Mr. Hale, he said, you will have your opportunity to speak. As the lawyer continued this, they painted a picture of me that barely resembled a person. I was distant, unreliable, a daughter who had chosen spectacle over substance, service over family. I listened without reacting. Years of training had taught me how to separate noise from meaning. Most of what he said was noise. My mind drifted back to the first time I realized my father cared more about perception than truth. I was 13, standing at a church fundraiser with a certificate in my hands. Later, someone asked how his kids were doing. My son is starting varsity football, he said. That was it. No lie, just omission. I learned early that silence could erase you just as effectively as words. The scrape of my father's chair against the courtroom floor cut through the air as he stood again, unprompted. She abandoned us, he said, pointing directly at me. She left and never looked back. Missed holidays, missed funerals. Now she wants to stand here like she is better than us. I never said that, I replied quietly. He turned toward me, eyes blazing. You do not have to, he snapped. You wear it. The judge's gaze shifted to me. Miss Hale, he said, you may respond. I stood. My knee protested, a sharp reminder of why I no longer ran stairs for a living. I kept my voice even, my words measured. I did not abandon my family, I said. I served my country. I stayed away because I was told repeatedly that my presence was an embarrassment. That is not true, my father said immediately. You told me people would talk, I continued. You told me I made you look bad. I took you at your word. A murmur rippled through the gallery. I felt eyes shift, not judging, but reconsidering. My mother's hands tightened in her lap. You think this is noble? My father snapped. Showing up in uniform like that, making a scene. I did not come to make a scene, I said. I came because you took me to court. You did not have to wear that. I did not wear it for you. Silence settled thick and uncomfortable. The judge asked if I had documentation. I approached the bench with a slim folder tucked under my arm. It was not thick. It did not need to be. These payments were made consistently, the judge said, flipping through the pages. Yes, sir. And from an account under your name? Yes, sir. That does not mean anything, my father scoffed. Anyone can pay a bill. Mr. Hale, the judge said calmly, you will wait. I watched my father's hands clench until his knuckles went pale. I remembered those hands fixing engines, tightening bolts, teaching me how to hold a wrench. Seeing them shake stirred something complicated in my chest, something that was not satisfaction and not pity. You always play the martyr, he muttered. You never asked, I said, turning toward him slowly. The room went quiet. Even the judge paused, his pen hovering above the page. My father opened his mouth, then closed it again. Perception is not evidence, the judge said when the lawyer tried to pivot the argument. Then he asked the question that changed everything. Mr. Hale, he said, are you familiar with your daughter's service record? My father waved a dismissive hand. I know enough. Is it? The judge opened a thin file with a red tab. Are you aware, he asked, that your daughter was formally recognized by the Commonwealth of Virginia for her role in a civilian evacuation? What evacuation? My father asked. 47 civilians, the judge replied evenly. During Hurricane Elias, roads were impassable. Communications were unstable. No lives were lost. The room went utterly still. You are saying she did that? My father whispered. It was my job, I said. While you were concerned about appearances, the judge continued, your daughter was quietly preventing funerals. My father stared at me as if I were someone he had never truly met. For the first time, his certainty cracked. I felt no triumph, only the strange ache of being seen in a place I never expected to be. The judge did not stop with that one revelation. He rarely did. Men like him understood that truth, once exposed, needed context to land properly. He adjusted the papers in front of him, his movements slow and deliberate, then looked back at my father as if he were deciding how much weight the man could bear without breaking completely. For the past 8 years, the judge said, property taxes associated with the Hale family land have been paid on time without exception. My father nodded automatically, relief flickering across his face for just a moment. Yes, I have always made sure of that. The judge shook his head gently. Not by you, Mr. Hale. The room went quiet again, but the silence felt different. Thicker, expectant. They were paid by Ms. Hale, the judge continued, his voice steady. First from her active duty account and later from her disability pension following discharge. My father's mouth fell open. That is not possible, he said. His voice sounded smaller now, uncertain. She was not even here. And yet, the judge replied, the records are quite clear. I stared straight ahead, my jaw tight. I had never planned to say those things out loud. They had never felt like accomplishments to me. They were simply responsibilities that needed handling, problems that would not fix themselves if ignored. My father turned slowly toward me, as if afraid that a sudden movement might shatter something fragile. You have been paying for the land, he said. It was not a question. Yes, I answered. One word. No defense. No explanation. The judge flipped another page. There is more, he said. My father's lawyer shifted in his seat, his earlier confidence completely gone. He looked like a man who had misjudged the depth of the water and stepped in too far. In addition to the property taxes, the judge continued, Ms. Hale made recurring donations to the County Veterans Relief Fund under an anonymous designation. My father frowned. Veterans Relief? Yes, the judge said. Those donations covered emergency housing and utilities for several displaced families over the past 5 years. One of those families is connected to this court. A quiet gasp came from somewhere behind me. I felt my shoulders tense, instinctively bracing, even though there was no incoming threat. The anonymity, the judge added, was broken only because the court was required to verify financial records during these proceedings. My father's lawyer stared down at the table, his face pale. My mother finally looked at me then, really looked. Her eyes searched my face as if trying to reconcile the daughter she remembered with the woman sitting in front of her. You argued, the judge said, turning back to my father, that your daughter brought shame to your family. Yet the evidence shows that she preserved its assets, protected its legacy, and contributed to this community without recognition. He paused, letting that settle. If embarrassment exists here, he said quietly, it does not originate from her actions. My father's shoulders slumped, just slightly, but enough that I noticed. I had never seen him look uncertain before. He had always filled rooms with certainty, even when he was wrong. I did not know, he said again, softer this time. No, the judge agreed. You did not. The ruling itself came next, almost anticlimactic in comparison. The petition was denied. No abandonment. No reputational harm. Authority over the Hale family property remained with me, supported by documented stewardship and continued responsibility. The gavel came down once. Clean. Final. The room exhaled. People stood and gathered their things, voices returning slowly, cautiously, as if the air itself had been changed. I stayed seated for a moment, my hands trembling just slightly now, not from fear, but from release. In the hallway outside the courtroom, sunlight streamed through tall windows, catching dust motes in the air. My father stood a few steps behind me. I felt his presence before he spoke. Rebecca. He had not said my name like that in years. You could have told me, he said. I turned to face him. He looked older up close, smaller. His eyes were rimmed red, though his voice stayed rough and guarded. You could have asked, I replied. He nodded once, a sharp, embarrassed motion. I did not think you wanted us involved. I thought you were ashamed. I was protecting my peace, I said. He looked away. I was wrong. It was not loud. It was not complete. But it was real. I did not leave the courthouse right away. I stood near one of the tall windows, watching rain begin to streak the glass in thin, uneven lines. People passed by in small clusters, lawyers murmuring into phones, families speaking in low voices, strangers returning to lives that had not just been split open in public. A man in a faded veteran's cap paused as he walked past me. He glanced at the ribbons on my chest, then met my eyes. Thank you for your service, he said, simple and sincere. I nodded. Thank you for yours. Outside, the air smelled like wet pavement and salt drifting in from the harbor. I pulled my jacket tighter around myself and walked down the courthouse steps. I had not won anything tangible in that room. No money, no applause, just the right to keep what I had always carried and the truth placed firmly on the record. That felt like enough. That night, Knox greeted me at the door, his tail thumping weakly against the frame. He pressed his weight into my leg, grounding me in something solid and uncomplicated. I laid my uniform jacket carefully over the back of a chair. It felt quieter now, not lighter, just settled. Sunday came without drama. No storms, no grand speeches, Just an overcast sky and a long drive back to a house I had not entered in years. Dinner stayed small at first. Weather, the drive, my knee, Knox's limp. Then my father cleared his throat. I watched the news clip, he said, the one the judge mentioned. I did not answer. They talked about leadership, he continued, about staying calm when everything goes wrong. He looked up at me. You were always good at that. It was not praise, but it was not dismissal either. Before I left, he handed me my grandfather's compass. The needle inside still swung steady and sure. It belongs with you, he said. Weeks passed. Repairs were made. Words came slowly. One evening, standing on the porch, my father said, "You did good." It was the highest praise he knew how to give. Standing alone at dusk, fireflies blinking in and out of the tall grass, I thought back to the courtroom, to the moment my father shouted that all I ever did was embarrass him. The judge's question echoed louder than the accusation. You truly do not know, do you? Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is live so honestly that the truth eventually introduces itself. Thank you for listening.